What if the cheapest movies of the 50s and 60s turned out to be the most fun? At drive-ins across America, audiences lined up for double features packed with monsters, mutants, and mad science. These weren't glossy epics, but scrappy, unforgettable thrills. Some pairings became legends, delivering more imagination than their budgets should allow. Let's dig into 15 must-see B-horror and sci-fi combos that still pack a punch. The Tingler, 1959, plus House on Haunted Hill, 1959. Vincent Price ruled the era of gimmick horror, and these two films together are a masterclass in B-movie showmanship. William Castle's The Tingler is pure carnival fun. The premise? A creepy little creature lives on your spine and grows whenever you're scared. The only way to stop it is to scream. Yes, it's absurd, but Castle doubled down by wiring theater seats with buzzers so audiences thought the Tingler was crawling on them. On screen, Vincent Price chews through the role of a scientist convinced this spinal parasite exists, and the mix of science fiction and horror feels like a pulpy comic come to life. Then, you add House on Haunted Hill, released the very same year. Here, Price plays an eccentric millionaire who lures strangers to a supposed haunted mansion with the promise of cash if they last the night. The Gimmick in theaters? A skeleton floating over the audience during the climax. But even without the tricks, the film stands tall. The banter between Price and Carol Omart as his bitter wife is deliciously venomous, and the atmosphere drips with classic haunted house chills. Pairing them together makes perfect sense. Both are campy inventive and show Castle's obsession with turning moviegoing into an event. The Tingler is wild sci-fi horror. House on Haunted Hill is gothic fun, and Price ties it all together. This is a double feature that doesn't just entertain, it reminds you why people lined up at midnight shows grinning ear to ear. The Brain That Wouldn't Die, 1962, plus The Wasp Woman, 1959. If you want mad science gone off the rails, this double feature is your ticket. The Brain That Wouldn't Die opens with a young surgeon whose experiment goes horribly wrong. After a freak accident, his fiancée is reduced to a living head kept alive in a lab. Sounds bleak? Absolutely, but the movie plays it with such earnestness that it becomes unintentionally hilarious and genuinely unsettling at the same time. The head communicates telepathically, plotting revenge while the scientist hunts for a new body. It's the definition of pulpy 60s horror. Shocking concept, clunky execution, and somehow unforgettable. On the flip side, The Wasp Woman offers up another experiment gone sideways. Susan Cabot plays the desperate head of a cosmetics company who tries an experimental enzyme to restore her youth. The twist? She begins to transform into a wasp-like creature with a taste for blood. Produced by Roger Corman, it's fast, scrappy, and loaded with rubbery monster effects that scream drive-in horror at its finest. What makes this pairing work is their mirrored theme. The pursuit of scientific miracles leads to grotesque consequences. One film leaves you staring at a talking head in a dish, the other throws a half-woman, half-wasp creature at you. Both lean into melodrama, and both cement the atomic age's obsession with science, turning humans into monsters. It's schlock, but it's schlock that sticks in your brain, sometimes literally. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, plus The Day the World Ended, 1955. Cold War anxieties poured straight into movie screens, and these two films prove it. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a masterpiece, plain and simple. The small-town paranoia, the emotionless duplicates, and the dread of losing your identity, it's as sharp today as it was back then. Director Don Siegel delivers a lean, fast-moving story that makes you question who you can trust. Was it a metaphor for communism, McCarthyism, or just the universal fear of conformity? The fact that it works on every level is why it remains a classic. Paired with that, The Day the World Ended, a Roger Corman quickie, is smaller in scale but loaded with apocalyptic flavor. A handful of survivors hide out in a valley after nuclear war only to realize radiation has created grotesque mutants outside. It's rough around the edges, but its claustrophobic setting and creature design make it unforgettable. Corman knew how to stretch a dime into a disaster. Together, these films capture both sides of mid-50s fear. One shows the horror of blending in until you lose yourself. The other, the terror of being the last human standing. Watching them back to back is like flipping through a pulp magazine, politics on one page, monsters on the next. That's the beauty of the double feature. It gave you both the artful and the outrageous in one sitting. Plan 9 from Outer Space, 1957, plus Bride of the Monster, 1955. Ed Wood may not have made polished films, but he made unforgettable ones. This pairing is the ultimate Ed Wood double shot. Plan 9 from Outer Space has been mocked for decades as the worst film ever made, but once you watch it with an open mind, it's impossible not to smile. Aliens reanimate the dead to take over Earth. Bela Lugosi wanders through stock footage and cardboard sets wobble as actors deliver lines with baffling sincerity. It's chaotic, but it's also sincere. Wood wasn't cynical, he believed in his stories, even if his budget betrayed him. Bride of the Monster, made a couple years earlier, stars Lugosi in one of his last major roles as a mad scientist with a giant octopus prop and a laboratory full of lightning flashes. Tor Johnson, the hulking wrestler, stumbles around as his assistant. The dialogue is clunky, the set's cheap, yet somehow it all adds up to a strange charm that lingers long after the credits. Together, these films embody what people now celebrate as so bad it's good cinema. They weren't slick studio productions, they were scrappy dreams captured on film. Audiences laughed, sometimes unintentionally, but they remembered them. And that's more than can be said for countless polished movies lost to history. This double feature is messy bizarre and 100% unforgettable. The Crawling Eye, 1958, plus Fiend Without a Face, 1958. This pairing might be the crown jewel of low-budget sci-fi horror monsters with actual bite. The Crawling Eye, also called the Trollenberg Terror, takes us to the Swiss Alps, where a strange cloud hides a tentacled one-eyed creature. Climbers vanish, locals panic, and the monster reveals itself in gloriously rubbery fashion. It's one of those rare B-movies that actually delivers on its poster. You expect to see a ridiculous giant eye, and you get exactly that. The atmosphere with its fog-drenched mountains makes it all the more effective. Fiend Without a Face is even wilder. Set near a military base experimenting with radiation, invisible creatures begin killing soldiers. When they finally appear, they're revealed as disembodied brains with spinal cords that leap and strangle. Shot with stop motion, the creatures are surprisingly grotesque and energetic, making the finale a full-on monster siege that still thrills. Pairing these two creates a perfect monster marathon. Both films prove that B-movies didn't always need big names or glossy sets to leave an impression. They just needed a bold creature design and the nerve to show it. The Crawling Eye gives you eerie mountain chills. Fiend Without a Face turns into full creature chaos, and together they feel like a greatest hits album of 50s sci-fi terror, pure drive-in magic. The Giant Gila Monster, 1959, plus The Killer Shrews, 1959. Two drive-in cult favorites released the same year, both made on shoestring budgets and both unforgettable in their own weird ways. The Giant Gila Monster is exactly what it sounds like. A real lizard filmed on miniature sets to look enormous, stomping through the Texas countryside. It's clunky, sure, but there's an odd sincerity to it. You get hot rod, sock hop energy, and a small-town hero who doubles as a singer-songwriter belting out rock tunes in between monster attacks. It's a slice of Americana where atomic-age panic collides with teenage culture. The monster may look like a pet store lizard on steroids, but it works in a campy, charming way. Now throw in The Killer Shrews, which swaps desert highways for an isolated island besieged by oversized rodents. The filmmakers couldn't afford elaborate effects, so they put dogs in shaggy costumes and let them loose. Ridiculous? Absolutely. But when those shrews swarm snapping and clawing, it somehow gets under your skin. The claustrophobic setting humans trapped in a house building makeshift armor to survive gives it surprising tension. What makes these two films perfect together is their scrappy drive-in energy. Both were shot, quickly marketed hard, and delivered exactly what teenagers wanted in their cars on a Saturday night. Monsters action and a little rebellion. Neither pretended to be high art, yet both became cult staples that fans still talk about. Watch them as a double bill, and you'll understand why bargain basement filmmaking sometimes produces the most fun. Tarantula, 1955. Plus, Beginning of the End, 1957. Giant insects ruled the 50s, and this pairing shows why audiences kept coming back for more. Tarantula, directed by Jack Arnold, is a standout. A rogue scientist in the desert experiments with a growth formula that accidentally unleashes a massive tarantula on nearby towns. The effects are simple, just a real spider composited into scenes, but they're surprisingly convincing for the time. Watching a giant tarantula crawl over mountains while people panic feels both absurd and chilling. It's atmospheric fun and full of that nature-gone-wild paranoia that defined the decade. Beginning of the End, on the other hand, is pure B-movie spectacle. Radiation and experimental crops lead to grasshoppers growing into skyscraper-sized menaces. They swarm Chicago, climbing famous buildings and devouring everything in sight. The effects are laughable by modern standards, grasshoppers walking across postcards, but there's a scrappy charm to it. Peter Graves anchors the chaos with a dead-serious performance, which only makes the silliness more entertaining. Together, these films highlight the twin obsessions of the era: fear of science gone wrong and the thrill of watching nature turn monstrous. Tarantula gives you sleek desert horror. Beginning of the End drops you into a city under siege. It's a combo that feels like a creature feature sampler platter. Giant spiders, mutant grasshoppers, and straight-faced scientists trying to stop them. It's everything we love about atomic age B horror rolled into one unforgettable night. The Amazing Colossal Man, 1957. Plus War of the Colossal Beast, 1958. If one tragic giant wasn't enough, why not two films about him? This is a rare double-feature sequel set that actually improves when paired. The Amazing Colossal Man tells the story of Lieutenant Glenn Manning exposed to plutonium in a desert test site. Instead of dying, he grows to 50 feet tall, his body expanding out of control while his sanity crumbles. It's part horror, part tragic drama. Watching a once-disciplined soldier lose his humanity as he towers over buildings gives the film more weight than you'd expect from a low-budget monster flick. His rampage across Las Vegas mixes spectacle with genuine sadness. Then comes War of the Colossal Beast, the sequel that doubles down. Manning returns horribly scarred and even more unstable, haunting Los Angeles with his enormous size. This film leans into his monstrous side while still keeping the thread of tragedy alive. The climax, involving his final desperate act, gives the story a strangely emotional punch. Together, these films create a two-part saga about power isolation and the cost of unchecked science. They're pulpy, yes, but they also sneak in a Frankenstein-like sadness. The Colossal Man isn't just a monster, he's a victim. Watching both films back-to-back makes you realize how B-movies sometimes aimed higher than their budgets allowed, giving us not just thrills, but unexpected pathos. It's a double feature that proves size isn't everything, it's the story that sticks. The Hideous Sun Demon, 1958, plus Attack of the 50th Woman, 1958. Two sides of the atomic age coin, one personal, one spectacular, both unforgettable. The Hideous Sun Demon is a small but surprisingly effective film about a scientist exposed to radiation who transforms into a reptilian creature whenever he's in sunlight. It's a simple idea, but the execution gives it real bite. The low-budget monster makeup may look crude, yet the story of a man losing his humanity under the glare of the sun taps into genuine fear. His transformations are tragic, and the film plays like a cautionary tale about the limits of human control. Attack of the 50th Woman, on the other hand, goes big, literally. A wealthy but troubled woman encounters an alien sphere, and soon she grows to colossal size. Towering over buildings, she storms through town in search of the man who betrayed her. It's campy, yes, but the spectacle of a giant woman ripping off rooftops and hurling cars is undeniably entertaining. It's one of the most iconic images of 50s sci-fi immortalized on posters and in pop culture. Put these films together and you get a fascinating double bill. One is about mutation as personal tragedy, the other about transformation as empowerment and vengeance. Both are drenched in atomic paranoia, both lean into wild concepts, and both show that cheap effects didn't stop filmmakers from swinging for the fences. It's a combo that gives you the best of B-movie imagination, intimate horror, and city-stomping spectacle. The Black Scorpion, 1957, plus Earth vs. the Spider, 1958. When it comes to giant creepy crawlies, these two films bring out the best of stop-motion and low-budget thrills. The black scorpion opens in Mexico after a volcanic eruption unleashes giant prehistoric scorpions. The stop-motion work by Willis O'Brien, the pioneer behind King Kong, elevates the film far above its budget. The creatures are menacing, the battles intense, and the cavern sequences filled with lurking, clicking monsters are still effective today. It's a film that proves even B-movies could reach for artistry when they had the right talent behind the effects. Earth versus the Spider, directed by Burt B. Gordon, is pure drive-in fare. A giant tarantula terrorizes a small town, and teenagers discover it while searching for a missing parent. The story is thin, but the spectacle of a massive spider webbing up a high school auditorium is a highlight of atomic-age creature cinema. Gordon, nicknamed Mr. Big for his obsession with big creatures, leans into the formula but never skimps on fun. Together, these two films deliver the ultimate arachnid and insectoid thrill ride. One is technically polished with top-tier stop-motion. The other is scrappy and aimed at teenage audiences. Watching them back-to-back shows both sides of the creature feature coin, serious attempts at monster realism and gleefully pulpy thrills. Either way, you'll never look at a spider or scorpion the same way again. The Unearthly, 1957, plus The Astounding She-Monster, 1957. Sometimes the cheapest movies make for the wildest double bills, and these two are a perfect example. The Unearthly stars John Carradine as a mad doctor running a sanatorium where patients are really just experiments. He's developing artificial glands to extend life, but the results are monstrous, giving us mutants that shuffle through the halls. It's low budget, full of stiff dialogue and rubbery makeup, yet Carradine's sinister presence carries it. Tor Johnson, the towering wrestler-turned-actor, adds to the atmosphere as his lumbering assistant. It's a classic case of a film so clumsy it loops back around to being entertaining. The Astounding She-Monster is even more threadbare. It follows a group of kidnappers who get more than they bargained for when a glowing alien woman crashes near their hideout. With a skin-tight costume that looks like it was made in someone's garage, she wanders silently, radiating deadly energy. The narration tries to sell it as serious sci-fi, but the effect is closer to pulp comic book silliness. And that's exactly why it works. Together, these films give you everything that define the bottom rung of the B-movie ladder. Quick productions, wild posters promising more than the budget could deliver, and a weird charm that made them drive-in staples. Neither pretends to be polished, but both capture the scrappy creativity of an industry cranking out thrills for eager teenagers. Watch them together, and you'll feel like you're sitting under the stars at a dusty drive-in lot, popcorn in hand, ready for anything. It, The Terror from Beyond Space, 1958, plus The Phantom Planet, 1961. Outer space wasn't just the final frontier, it was the perfect stage for B-level thrills. It, The Terror from Beyond Space is a lean, mean sci-fi horror that predates Alien by 2 decades. A rescue mission to Mars brings back a survivor accused of killing his crew, but the real culprit is an alien stowaway that hunts humans through the spaceship's corridors. The confined setting, the creeping dread, and the bulky monster suit all combine to create a claustrophobic thriller that's far more effective than its budget suggests. It's no wonder it's often cited as a direct influence on Ridley Scott's masterpiece. The Phantom Planet takes a very different approach. An astronaut crash lands on a tiny asteroid where he shrinks to the size of its inhabitants. What follows is a mix of romance, political intrigue, and low-budget cosmic adventure. It's bizarre, but it has an earnestness that makes it watchable, even charming. The sets look like a high school stage play, yet the idea of a man reduced to miniature scale on another world is imaginative enough to keep you hooked. Pair these two together, and you've got the perfect cosmic double bill. One film traps you in the shadows of a spaceship with something hungry, the other shrinks you into a surreal alien society. Both prove that B-Sci-Fi didn't just recycle earthbound monsters, they pushed imagination out into the stars, even when the special effects couldn't keep up. The result? 2 films that still capture the wonder and dread of exploring the unknown. The Monster That Challenged the World, 1957, plus Creature with the Atom Brain, 1955. 2 atomic-age horrors with very different flavors, one from the depths, the other from science gone too far. The Monster That Challenged the World is set near California's Salton Sea, where an earthquake unleashes giant prehistoric mollusks. Yes, mollusks. Their slimy, slow-moving menace turns into surprisingly effective horror, thanks to clever creature effects and tense pacing. The scenes of these massive, shell-crunching beasts invading labs and waterways give the film a gritty, serious edge that elevates it above most of its contemporaries. It's pulp, but pulp with bite. Creature with the Atom Brain goes in a different direction, blending crime drama with sci-fi horror. A gangster uses science to reanimate corpses, creating a small army of super-strong killers under his control. The film plays it straight, presenting its bizarre premise with hard-boiled confidence. The reanimated figures march stiffly through their assignments, a chilling image, even when the budget shows its seams. Together, these two films balance each other perfectly. One brings you underwater terror and practical creature design. The other mixes noir-style grit with atomic age weirdness. They show how the 50s didn't stick to one formula. B-movies weren't just about big bugs or outer space. They could be crime thrillers, monster flicks, or strange hybrids in between. Watching them as a double bill feels like flipping channels between a monster matinee and a detective drama with atomic paranoia binding it all together. The Manster, 1959, plus Blood of Dracula, 1957. Double the madness. One film about a man splitting into two, the other about a teenage girl turned into a monster. The Manster is one of the strangest international co-productions of the era, shot in Japan with an American lead. A reporter is injected with a serum by a deranged scientist, and soon he develops a second head sprouting from his shoulder. The image is unforgettable, campy, grotesque, and oddly effective. As his condition worsens, his humanity slips away, turning the film into a tragic descent into madness. It's one of those B-movies that lingers in your mind long after because the visual is just so bizarre. Blood of Dracula, despite its title, isn't really about the famous Count. Instead, it tells the story of a troubled teenage girl sent to boarding school where a teacher's experiments unleash her darker vampiric side. Clearly inspired by the success of I Was a Teenage Werewolf, it blends coming-of-age angst with monster horror. The special effects are modest, but the themes of authority, rebellion, and transformation make it resonate beyond its budget. Together, these films make a great pairing because they deal with identity and loss of control. One man literally becomes two beings fighting for dominance, while a young woman loses herself to a monstrous alter ego. Both are cautionary tales wrapped in pulpy monster trappings, and both showcase how B-movies often reflected deeper fears through outrageous metaphors. Put them together, and you've got a night of strange transformations and double the tension. Robot Monster, 1953, plus Catwomen of the Moon, 1953. Two early 50s slices of sci-fi camp, both unforgettable for very different reasons. Robot Monster is legendary for its sheer oddness. The villain Ro-Man is basically a man in a gorilla suit with a space helmet strapped on, armed with bubble machines and endless monologues. Yet the film, shot in a canyon near Los Angeles, manages to be strangely hypnotic. Its low budget is obvious, but its sincerity is undeniable. The dreamlike structure and bizarre visuals turned it into one of the most talked about bad movies ever made, which is part of its lasting charm. Catwomen of the Moon takes us in a different but equally campy direction. A rocket crew lands on the lunar surface and discovers a hidden society of women plotting to take over Earth. The sets are cardboard, the acting stilted, but the costumes and outlandish concept make it impossible to forget. For audiences of the early 50s, it was the kind of pulp fantasy that felt lifted straight from a comic book cover. Together, these two films capture the essence of B-sci-fi's earliest years. Bold concepts, shoestring execution, and a kind of unintentional poetry that keeps people coming back. Neither is polished, but both are memorable in ways slicker productions often aren't. Watch them together, and you'll see why fans still cherish the weirdest corners of mid-century sci-fi. They're not just bad, they're brilliantly bizarre. So, there you have it. 15 double features that prove B-horror and sci-fi weren't just filler. They were the lifeblood of the drive-in era. These weren't prestige pictures, but they gave audiences something priceless. Wild imagination, scrappy thrills, and unforgettable creatures. Which of these combos would you queue up first? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe for more deep dives, and share this with your fellow cult cinema fans. After all, the best double features are the ones we keep talking about long after the reels stop spinning.